Today, serious musicians and guitarists will instantly recognize the name and music of Federico Moreno Torroba. He was a native of Madrid, Spain, born into a musical family on March 3, 1891. His father was a prominent musician who taught organ at the Royal Conservatory. The younger Torroba was musically gifted and came to prominence in the 1920s with his first successful Zarzuelas, a form of Spanish operetta. Torroba's Zarzuelas were immensely popular in Spain. He wrote 70 during his lifetime. The composer, a non-guitarist, was encouraged to write music for the guitar by Andre Segovia, Spain's most famous guitarist. With Segovia's help, Torroba mastered the genre and scores of compositions flowed from his pen. Torroba lived most of his life in Madrid, only retreating to Navarra in northern Spain during the country's civil war. He developed a deep emotional attachment to the region. Federico Moreno Torroba died in Madrid on September 12, 1982. His son, Federico Jr., a gifted musician, continues to conduct his father's works.
He was always looking for a way to demonstrate through his music the essence of Spanish culture, that internal, eternal story of Spain. So as he composed, he was trying to express that through music of different regions. Some of his music sounds like it could come from Andalusia, other times Castile or Navarra. So he sought to encompass all of Spain in his music and present it to the world.
Like my colleague, William Krauss, I've been interested in Spanish music most of my life, particularly as a guitarist. I started playing Spanish guitar, flamenco, and classical guitar in my teens. And so I've known the music of Torroba for decades. He is a tremendous composer, but he's not as well known to the general public as many other composers are. The 20th century composers such as Stravinsky and Schoenberg, even Spanish composers like Joaquin Rodrigo are more familiar to the concert-going public than Moreno Torroba, but there's no essentially good reason for that. The principal reason that Moreno Torroba is not as well known to the general public is because he specialized in writing Spanish operetta, called Zarzuela, or Zarzuela. These works, of which he wrote about 70, are hugely popular in Spain and throughout the Spanish-speaking world. But they're not very exportable, so they're far less well known in Northern Europe and in North America outside of Mexico.
When you consider the two genres in which Moreno Torroba excelled, the zarzuela and guitar music, it seems like the two would not have much in common with one another. In the one case, you have a full production with an orchestra in the pit, and you have singers on stage and sets and the chorus, grand production. On the other hand, you have something as intimate as the guitar, a solo instrument that really is a chamber instrument for chamber music, a small room. Yet the two have every bit in common. The way that Torroba composed for the guitar is always very lyrical. Any of his pieces, you could leave the room singing. It seems like you could write words to just about everything he did for the guitar. So in a very real sense, it's a lyrical type of instrumental composition, if that makes sense. So I think that his background in the zarzuela, his knowledge of the voice, made a big difference in the way he composed for the guitar.
The name Moreno Torroba is associated principally with his guitar music. Now, he wrote almost 100 pieces for guitar, including 10 concertos. And this is wonderful music, and it's how Bill and I became interested in him as a composer. But the fact is that unless you are a fan of the classical guitar or a classical guitarist yourself, you're probably not as familiar with the name Moreno Torroba. Torroba came to prominence as a composer in the 1920s. One of his first major hits, in fact, I think his first great zarzuela is called La Marchinera, or The Girl from Marchena. It was also in that decade that he began to write for the guitar, starting in 1920 with a piece called the Danza, or Dance, which later formed part of his famous Suite Castellana, or Castilian Suite, which comprises 3 movements, a fandanguillo and an arada, and then concludes with this danza. Why did he begin writing for the guitar? Well, he became acquainted with an up-and-coming guitar virtuoso named Andre Segovia. And Segovia was familiar with this young and very promising composer in Madrid by the name of Moreno Torroba. So he approached him, as he approached many composers, to write music for the guitar.
Torroba gave us many fantastic compositions. What is, to me, different? It represents a sense of joy, a sense, but with a nostalgia. Torroba is always searching for and take us to beautiful places. I think because the great gift that he had as a zarzuela composer, zarzuela paints us, it gives us the most incredible picture of what el pueblo, what the people of Spain was like at that time. He brings that to the guitar music. And he had an incredible sense. Torroba didn't play the guitar, but he had an incredible sense for what was possible and what would sound really great on the guitar. And he combined that with his love of Spain. I think that Torroba loved Spain deeply and independent of anything that historically went through during the period of his long life.
The composer's son, Federico Jr., lives in a beautiful town in northern Spain in the province of Navarra called Sant Esteban. It's a quiet place. It's the place where Moreno Torroba went to write some of his compositions. He said in some of his letters and other interviews that he could stay up all night and just compose at the piano, didn't disturb anyone, wake up in the morning, take a walk down by the river. A beautiful setting to work on something as inspired as Moreno Torroba's music.
I know of him from the music that I play, and it's interesting because what you said about the colors and the beauty of the sound. I think with Torroba's music, what I'm really interested in, and what is very challenging is that you can create a lot of different colors, and a lot of different moods, and I think his music is so alive. And that really, I really like that very much, and I like to kind of tell a story through the music, and his music really is wonderful, and you can just say so many things.
Moreno Torroba's music embraces all of Spain, not only the zarzuelas, but also the guitar music. And that makes him a very distinctive composer because most people outside of Spain associate Spanish music with flamenco and Andalusia. But in fact, Spain is a country of many regions and many languages. And each region has its own culture, its own dances, its own costumes, its own instruments, its own folklore. And Moreno Torroba was very familiar with these various traditions and evoked them in his music very effectively.
Torroba was the voice of the people, and the guitar is the instrument of the people.